Myths related to second language acquisition. Now, what is a myth? A myth is a story that we keep on hearing about the past, which may not be true. So there are similarly several myths related to the learning or acquisition of the second language. What is the first myth and the most common one that we hear? The first myth that we often come across when we are trying to learn a second language is that it is the children who can learn second language quickly and easily. So it is based on the assumption that children's brains are more flexible and they can learn language much easier than adults. Now, current research actually challenges this biological imperative or this biological condition. It argues that not all the children learn language at the same speed, and they might not be comparable to adults who might be at times more successful than children in learning the second language. That is because there are a number of physiological, related to the physique, related to the brain itself, and there are several other social factors, attitudes, identity, the social class. All these factors may have an impact on the learning of the second language. What we want to say that it is not just the age of the child or the age of the adult that might lead to more or less comparative success or failure to learn the second language, but there are other factors at work also. So there are conditions under which research has shown that adults learn the second language much faster than the second language. However, having said that, one has to keep in mind that there is this area of pronunciation, the area of language which deals with accent, pronunciation, sound system. In that area, definitely the children, not only the children learn faster, but they are better in emulating or imitating and then imbibing in themselves those aspects of language. So this myth actually, if we follow this myth, it raises the question that is child a superior illusionary? That is, a child is better able than an adult to perceive how language will be constructed and somehow naturally gets to learn the second language. This is a myth. That means that is not true. A child does not have to learn as much as an adult to achieve a second language competence or communicative competence, because a child's language is much more simple than the adult language. So a child is learning at the same speed depending on all the other factors as the adult, but the language that the child is using is much simpler. That is why when a child imitates and reproduces the same collection of phrases or sentences, we feel that the child is learning faster. However, we have to keep in mind that if you notice, a child's vocabulary is much smaller than an adult, and you do not expect the child also to use a variety of vocabulary. And if you hear them carefully using the second language, you would realize that they keep on rotating this limited vocabulary bank that they have. So it might seem that the child learns quicker. However, typically adults and adolescent learners perform better than children when they are learning different structures of language. So, what we are saying over here now is that learning a second language is as much difficult for a child as it is for an adult, or maybe even more difficult, because when the adult is learning a second language, especially and more specifically when we are talking about academic English, that the kind of English that we want our children to learn in schools, then the adults might be much more advantaged because they already have in their repertoire this first language, which we first, not only the first language, but the knowledge of how a first language works. So when they learn the second language, they are better able to make associations with their old knowledge of their first language and then come up with some kind of hypothesis or ideas about how the second language is working. When we are talking about the children, they do not have any first language to fall back on if we start exposing them to the second language. So maybe their comprehension is not just as good as it seems to be because of their expertise in pronunciation.